There is a dark secret being kept from science, one that, if it's ever known, could mean the rewriting of the whole of reality as we know it. The frightening thing is, it might just happen anyway, and there's a good chance that nothing even the SCP Foundation can do has any hope of stopping it. For all we know, by the time you're watching this, it's already happened, and you're living in the world that comes after. It began with a portal opening in deep space, far enough that only satellites or phenomenally powerful telescopes could possibly begin to make it out. This is the reason for the extensive disinformation and amnestics campaigns that have been performed across worldwide astronomy communities. The portal is 5.5 astronomical units away from Earth and appears as a uniform 5 polytope, a geometric pattern of ever-increasing complexity that often defies the mind's attempts to even conceive it. Be kind and leave a nice comment for the animators who have to represent that idea visually. This portal in and of itself would be a fascinating paradigm-shifting anomaly, but of far greater interest here is the frightening impossibility that lurks behind it: the fifth-dimensional space. In order to fully understand the sheer anomalous magnitude of what we're discussing here today, there are a few anomalous concepts that you need to become familiar with. And if you've watched our previous videos on the Fifth Church and their related anomalies, this will, thankfully, be relatively painless to grasp. Until the anti-memes start coming for you anyway, but more on that later. First, you need to understand the layer of the multiverse known as the Neosphere. Think of this as the idea that human minds, human thought, are a dimension unto themselves. A place woven out of the tapestry of cognition, where ideas live in a shared ecosystem buttressed by human thought. Ideas believed in by billions of people, like, say, certain religious beliefs, are the megafauna, beings of unimaginable size and power. Fringe ideas, those held by perhaps even a few hundred people in a planet of billions, are the microbes of this universe. It all lives and breathes and circulates healthily, a dense sphere of conceptual entities. Of course, one of the most powerful conceptual entities imaginable, one that everyone unanimously agrees must be obeyed, is the idealistic manifestation of SCP Explained. If you wish to protect yourself if ever this entity escapes from the Neosphere and into our own reality, your best bet is subscribing to SCP Explained. The fifth dimension, classified as SCP-5800, is connected to this Neospheric hub. But this is not a place of ecological harmony, not by a long shot. The fifth dimension is the natural habitat of inconceivably huge and dangerous predatory ideas, which hunt and consume weaker ideas in order to give themselves more space to propagate. To better understand how this works, I'd like you to take a look at this petri dish and remind you all of why it's so important to finish a course of antibiotics if you're prescribed ones. What you see is a microbial biome. Different bacteria are all competing for space and resources, not unlike us humans. And when a bacterial infection causes you to get sick, you'll be prescribed a course of antibiotics. Over the course, the weaker bacteria will be killed, and you might even begin to feel better. But if you stop taking your course, the only bacteria left in the petri dish will be the most durable and dangerous. And with all the nutrients left to themselves and plenty of real estate to grow, you will soon find yourself with a big problem that you don't have the tools to fight. And those are the exact kinds of ideas slithering through the fifth dimension, not measured in inches or even miles, but stacks of infinities. A kind of existence that most would be damn near impossible to even conceive. And at this point, you've likely noticed a pattern. The fifth dimension, 5.5 astronomical units away from Earth, a uniform 5 polytope. Yes, these recurring numerical values all point in one direction. This anomaly is directly connected to the Fifth Church and several of its most prominent anomalies. There is, of course, SCP-1425, the successful and highly dangerous anomalous self-help book Star Signals, created by a Fifth Church publishing subsidiary. The book uses a series of formalized reality warping rituals to both induct people into the Fifthist belief system and rewrite reality on a large scale. A key passage in Chapter 6 reads, "Now imagine that the place where your desires are made real has a name. It's called the Fifth World. The Fifth World is the cosmos twisted around you into the shape you will wish for. It has never been, but you can make it so. If the current world is like a tight-collared suit, then the Fifth World is like a flowing robe that allows complete freedom of movement. You will never truly move before you move in the Fifth World. You'll feel like a square on a piece of paper who is only just sick about up and down." Foundation researchers have, understandably, since concluded that this Fifth World and the Fifth Dimension are one and the same. And Star Signals was just another step in damaging the fabric of reality to bring the merging of these worlds closer. Of course, we get another fragment of the master plan with SCP-2155, a mimetic afterimage of a fictional nation-state in the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan. Documentation taken from within this seemingly impossible location refers to a fifth sun, believed to somehow be yet another emanation of the fifth dimension we're dealing with here. The same can be said of SCP-3005, a malfunctioning Scranton reality anchor causing horrific, mind-boggling effects as a result of it, well, being anchored to the wrong reality. Given that the effects it's causing, abstracting the tangible and giving form to the abstract, it's easy to make the connection that the reality that anchor was keyed into is the very one that sits beyond the SCP-5800 portal. And really, what is a door without a key? This was the question that tied SCP-4565 into the mix. Dealing a pitched battle between forces involving Sarkic, Mechanite, and Fifthist influences during a 13th century Vatican crusade. One of the key items in this crusade, known as the Key to the Kingdom of Heaven, is highly coveted by the Fifthists, and the Foundation has pondered for years whether this coveting has something to do with the Fifth World that appears so much in their scripture. Viewers keyed into our particular wavelength may have also noticed something there. SCP-1425, SCP-2155, SCP-3005, and SCP-4565. 4 anomalies, with SCP-5800 being the fifth. This is not an accident. Nothing in the world of Fifthism ever is. But before the Foundation's knowledge of any of this, there was the Petroslav Notes. These were written by the pioneering Russian sorcerer Igor Petroslav during his astral studies of the fifth dimension during the 18th century. They were then sealed away, not to be seen again until 1996. His mystic writings on the world of ideas, as he called it, a rudimentary conception of the modern Neosphere, is more than vital in understanding what we do about SCP-5800 today. If there is a world of ideas, then there is a world that contains the opposite of ideas. It took some experimentation to be able to breach the boundary between these two worlds. But now I can see why it was sealed away. I found it to be frayed at the ends, yet overflowing with some substance that can only be accurately described as light in our universe. This light is very pleasing to take in. Unfortunately, it melts the mind and causes madness. Abraham stared into the portal for the entire day, and at the end he couldn't say a coherent sentence that didn't involve the color pink or the sight of smoke. In addition, the light seems to have an adverse effect on animals, as my 2 cats ran for their lives at the sight of the opening. If my observations are correct, I believe that submerging anything inside of this world will inevitably result in the idea remaining there. Victor put an apple inside of the portal before taking it out. The apple slowly shifted forms and color, until it turned itself into a green snake who spoke cautionary tales about liquid hands and hateful stars in the sky. I took the liberty of sealing the aperture after that. I'd rather not have ideas interact with the world for a prolonged period of time. Clearly, this is an influence that would be wise to avoid merging with our world, as the tiny glimpses of the chaos that could ensue that we've seen in other anomalies has shown. And while Petroslav was the first to put these thoughts down, he was far from the last, as the SCP Foundation's own Dr. McWarren recorded in an audio log after hearing the term studying SCP-5800's effects on human cognition. As Igor predicted centuries before, exposing oneself to the light seemed to be a one-way trip to a dangerous place. What we found out is that there is a philosophy stemming around the hidden potential of the human mind, that in order to ascend past the boundaries of everything, one must secede from their personal principles and unlock what's within. These, it's just a metaphorical analogy and all that. Ideas presented in a way for us to understand how truly be one with the very hand that exists above us and sits at a many-angled throne of stars and pure radiance. A blissful... Sorry, got a bit carried away there. Anyway, there are sects that had a long history, with a certain key stretching all the way back to the Third Crusade. A key that could open all the doors to the world and the mind itself. We haven't figured out much about this door, though. I'm sure we have some keys locked up that can open some door or all doors, but I don't know anything about a door. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think we ever had a door contained in the first place. Or did we? I don't know. The researcher was, well, let's just say, put on leave after that, since we're in polite company. But given that the Foundation had already discovered the extreme dangers of people being exposed to this light, it made sense to move on from mere containment and instead move towards neutralizing SCP-5800 once and for all. You know, for the good of reality. To this end, Project Border Blue was established. A large self-sustaining colony was created near the entrance to the anomaly out in deep space, personally managed by O5-5, a member of the O5 Council. However, this turned out to be far less of a boon than initially imagined. Not long after deployment, a distress signal from the colony to Site-19 claimed that they were being pulled into the anomaly. The view from the site didn't seem to corroborate this, but before any rescue team could be sent in to assess the situation, the base completely vanished, along with everyone on it. Of course, this would be bad enough, wouldn't it? But it was so much more than the loss of just one advanced space station. When it was seemingly dragged into the anomaly, everything changed, and a new anomaly was created. It's called SCP-5800-A, but its catchier name is the SCP Foundation. The colony slipped into the anomaly seemed to anomalize the very idea of the SCP Foundation as an ideated concept, and alter so much of its fundamental truth in our universe. But it isn't that simple. First, the fifth dimension altered one high-ranking Foundation member, O5-5. Interesting. Something seemingly oddly familiar about those numbers. When MTF Alpha-1, the personal bodyguards of the O5 Council, performed a routine inspection on the chambers of O5-5, they found him sacrificing several other high-ranking members of Foundation's staff. On the ground, a pentagram drawn in their blood. A 5-pointed star, another classic symbol of the Fifthists. It was upon the completion of this ritual that everything shifted. Suddenly, the Foundation abandoned its old mission of containment and suppression. High-ranking members of the organization were instead replaced by high-ranking members of the Fifth Church. Scores of anomalies were released into the world, considering their containment no longer important to the new mission. And there was no other containment organization to pick up the slack, because the Global Occult Coalition was soon absorbed into the new Foundation too. In the aftermath of the chaos, Dr. Sean Remus, who was not in line with the Foundation's new direction, confronted O5-5 directly in hopes of understanding what had happened. Remus asked, "So what's your story then? Why have you suddenly changed the Foundation's prime directive and absorbed the competition?" O5-5 had to suppress a laugh. You don't really get it, do you? You think we can just solve the world's problems by putting them all in boxes? Four-sided boxes filled with the vilest and darkest of evils. If this is about the number 5, there's no scientific evidence that it is what you claim it is. 05-5 wasn't laughing now. His face instead twisted into a dark sneer. But God will cleanse this fetid world. This forsaken universe is a sin, and we will be born anew in God's glorious, dazzling light. It's not a fantasy, Sean. It's not even a reality. It is so much more than that and beyond. It is an escape, and we have the key to bring it here. The key? Could this mean SCP-5800, Remus wondered. When you cut the arm off of a starfish, what happens? The Overseer asked. What? I don't... It grows back, right? You have to know. God's omnipresence expands above all the worlds in every universe. We thought we could keep it out by obliterating the very idea of God's existence. And it didn't even work. We tried to exorcise it from the very abyss in our heads. We tried so damn hard to cut it out. But like a starfish, it grew back. You can't stop it. God is here to bring us what we deserve. With all due respect, Overseer, you're insane. What? You think we could just lock the door and throw away the key? It was always there. We put God on the other side of the door and pretended that everything was all right, even though it wasn't. It never was. But we can still try to bring it here, Remus. Deep down in the moist music and the orgasmic smoke of your heart's mind. You know that it's true. We already have the key, and we know where the door is. The tape stops here. Everything you just experienced was found on a series of vinyl records in the ruins of buildings we believe was called Site 01. And there it will remain, because the information seems to delete itself every time we attempt to digitize it. This also seems to have something to do with a group called the SCP Foundation, but we can't seem to find any records on that. Our research will be ongoing on that matter. Praise the Fifth. Now check out SCP-001, The Way the World Ends, The Gate Opens, and SCP-XK Class End of the World Scenarios Explained for more.